Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. How are you today on this gorgeous Tuesday morning here in the Southern Hemisphere and it's evening in the Northern Hemisphere. Welcome, and if you're here for the first time, it's wonderful to have you with me. Remember to say good day or hashtag replay. And if you're here and you haven't followed on Facebook, feel free to follow my profile, it's public. And if you're on YouTube, remember to hit subscribe to know when the latest videos are released. Today is a really important topic for a number of reasons. Complex PTSD and borderline personality disorder. I'm going to sum it up at the end as to what's happening with diagnosis and where we're up to, etc., etc. But I want to take it a little bit at a time. I actually have 3 infographics this morning. I'm not going to go into each individual part, but just to give you a list of what's happening, what's different, etc., etc., so that if you've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, you're able to differentiate what's the borderline personality disorder, what's the complex PTSD, because when we can do that and we have a clarity in our mind of which one's which, it helps us know which part we want to work on when we're either doing work with our therapist, work with a trauma coach, work with a mentor, or whoever we're working with, to be honest. Sorry, I just better turn the phone's off. I didn't want Siri interrupting today. Okay, so let's grab our first infographic. And if you've got note, paper and pen, you get a bit lost, don't stress, because I will put the infographics up down below. Okay, so when we're looking at complex PTSD, these are the outline of what we're looking at. And as you can see, it's a pretty big list. And, complex PTSD happens in childhood, and it's trauma that's repetitive, and it impacts so many parts of our life. And from my particular specialty, it impacts our neural pathways, our wiring in our brain, and impacts our body and so much more. Just look at all the videos where we talk about it and the strategies that we use in order to see how much it impacts our life. Okay, so nightmares and flashbacks, and anyhow, I can't go through each one because we need to get through. And my heart is that I want to, give so much information. But let's just look at each part today. Loss of meaning, hopelessness, avoiding places the trauma happened, being startled easily, persistent shame, guilt and fear, distrust, negative concepts of self, feeling estranged or detached from others, isolation, difficulty experiencing positive emotions and positivity, trouble regulating emotions, dissociation, difficulty with relationships, distorted image of the perpetrator, so a preoccupation with revenge or focused on the relationship with the perpetrator. So when you think about that, you can think about, am I doing everything possible to have a relationship with this person and it's just not working out? I'd actually never come across that symptom before, and I found it really interesting, but that's another chat show. Okay, next one. So now we want to look at the symptoms of borderline personality disorder. So, long-standing pattern of problematic thoughts, behaviours and feelings. Unstable relationships that often swing between idealisation of the partner and devaluing them. So, swinging from 1 minute they're, our greatest gift to the next minute they're the worst thing that ended our life. Difficulty controlling anger. Extreme efforts to avoid abandonment. So you'll do everything to hold on to a relationship rather than saying, right, enough, and let it go. So when you do that, it's very unhealthy for you. Deliberate self-harm, recurring suicidal thoughts or actions. Okay, so that's both lots of symptoms. So where do they overlap? What are the things that make it difficult to diagnose one or the other? So these are things that are common between them. So common is mood dysregulation, feeling of emptiness and loneliness, increased sense of guilt and shame, difficulty with anger, and decreased self-worth. Okay? So they're the things that they have in common. But what are the differences in borderline personality disorder? Okay, self-harm and suicidal behaviour. So if there is that in complex PTSD, it's not to the same extent as in borderline personality disorder. Paranoia, impulsivity, the love-hate cycle. So that was the 1 minute I love you, next minute I hate you. And not just people, but about the situations in your life. 1 minute I love work, next minute I hate it. And it's not just a simple thought process. It involves every part of us. Okay? Idealisation, devaluation, unstable sense of self. So CPTSD has a negative sense of self. An unstable sense of self buys into the love-hate. So 1 minute I feel good about who I am, the next minute I won't feel good about who I am. And it's such a revolving door that it is unstable internally. So look at it internally, don't look at it as external. So where are the experts up to on diagnosis of either complex PTSD or borderline personality disorder? There's actually 3 things happening at an expert level at the moment. One is that comorbidity. So you can have a diagnosis of both. So a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder and a diagnosis of complex PTSD. Another thought in the expert realm, specialist realm, is that borderline personality disorder is here, and then in order to incorporate all the symptoms of complex PTSD, they're thinking of putting it in under borderline personality disorder and adding it as another set of symptoms that may or may not be there, because borderline personality disorder doesn't always involve trauma. It can be genetic. So that line of thought at the experts level is that because the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, hasn't accepted complex PTSD as a separate diagnosis, but the ICM, which is the International, and I can't remember what the ICM stands for, but basically it's the international standard, okay? The DSM, from my understanding, originates in America. But the international standard this year did accept complex PTSD as a separate diagnosis to stand on its own. So with experts, there's varying agreement or disagreement, depends which way you want to look at it, as to what to do with complex PTSD. And like I say often, we're the first generation to have this recognised, all right? So as I said, borderline personality disorder, you don't have to have trauma because it can be genetic, it can be handed down. Complex PTSD, yes, there's absolutely the genetic component, but it's all of what comes with it is from childhood trauma. Okay, so then, and there's another one too. So that's right, some experts are looking at wanting to replace borderline personality disorder with complex PTSD, but there's not enough evidence. Okay, so remember, everything that they do as an expert, they want evidence-based information, which is good. It's a good thing to back it up, so they're not going to replace borderline personality disorder diagnosis at this point in time with complex PTSD, because even though we've got a lot of science to back it up, as far as the experts are concerned, they don't have enough to back it up at this stage. Okay, so I hope that's helped. I hope, as I said, I'll put the infographics down below. I hope you're able to grab hold of some of these symptoms and go, right, that's the next one I want to work on for me. I certainly, when I was going through the complex PTSD list, it gave me things to think about and think, right, that's what I want to focus on internally, developing strategies to overcome. And that's what is important to do with complex PTSD, is to develop the strategies that we didn't have developed in us in childhood due to the trauma. Okay, thanks for joining in this morning. If you have any questions or comments, please feel welcome to leave them down below. I'm always happy to help out as much as I possibly can, especially because it's all new. All right, blessings and dreams, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.